But yeah.
Okay. So then we start. Today, my guest is Aniket Mishra, the first representative of Asian Football Confederation in my project. So very welcome. And thank you for your time and for readiness to be my guest.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
I have many questions, many topics to talk, but I prefer to start from your yesterday message. You told me that we can't do it on Thursday because you have 2 matches, and maybe you can say some words. So what are you doing currently? Which tournaments now you have?
So, we at the Asian Football Confederation, Alex, are currently trying to organize the AFC Champions League, which is a marquee club competition. So that's going on in a centralized format in Doha. So we are busy with that. We are in Doha for that. So we had 2 quarterfinals yesterday, and hence I couldn't join your this little talk show that you have yesterday. But yeah, I'm sorry for that, but I'm here today, and I hope we managed to make a nice conversation out of this.
So as I understand, the Champions League you have like in Europe when Lisbon hosted all the final games.
Pretty much, yeah. So, UEFA kind of did set the template for it. We obviously adapted it to how things work in Asia, because we play the Champions League a little differently. As you would know, we get the teams from the East play first, and then the teams from the West play after that. Sorry, the other way around in this year. And then we have the final, which is like the winner of the East versus the winner of the West. So we are currently 1 match away from finishing the East part, which is the semi-final, and which is day after tomorrow. And we did the West before this, we did East right now, and we are basically 2 matches away from completing the season. So it's been a challenging year overall, but this had to be done. This was our marquee competition. So we are doing it in Doha this year. Yeah.
Can you say some words about the organization of that? Because UEFA already played the final part, the Champions League. It was pretty challenging, but still was good organized. Everybody was happy in one place. And now people even talking that maybe it's better to organize in one place than have this 2 games in playoff. Maybe it's even more competitive. It's better for the fans. Do you have somebody from UEFA, maybe from FIFA, or somebody from Asian Confederation had experiences in Europe and then came back and now sharing with you how it works?
No, but we have had, we don't have a physical representative from UEFA who's here with us, but we do kind of, have knowledge sharing with UEFA, with FIFA regarding things like these. And coming back to what you asked, what you said just before asking me about the UEFA bit, I would like to put it out there that I do feel that the original format that these competitions are played in are just more conducive to fans being involved, because you still have home matches and away matches. So if the pandemic does subside and you see now fans being brought into stadiums, fans being allowed in some form or the other, I think the whole essence of sport or live sport, a big part of it is fans. So if you take away the home, the home and away bit out of it, it's not the most ideal, but in case like we had this year, in case of a pandemic, if this had to be done, this had to be done. At least people can see it on broadcast. So we tried doing it, but really keeping my fingers crossed that we get back to the normal where it would be a little less convenient than this, where we all come to one venue and organize it. And you've worked in football operations, so you would understand. But just for the fact that you want more people to be involved in your event is a different kind of satisfaction, where you would have fans outside lining up with tickets, just letting them in, having them cheer the players on when they play. I really think that would make a difference, and that would perhaps help in making things go back to a little, normal, basically, if that's the right word to use over here. Over a period of time, you see the Premier League now, they're allowing a handful of fans to come in, but over a period of time, once people start getting vaccinated and they're tested before, once doors start opening up, I think it would really be amazing to have fans go back in. I think at least I have been to stadiums for the last 20 years of my life, and I almost took it for granted that I could go in and watch a game. And in this year, that has kind of gone for a toss. So people would really relish it a lot more if they now manage to go back to stadiums, because for a year you couldn't, right? Imagine having a season pass for your favorite team, but you couldn't see them for a year because of the pandemic.
Mm.
So you'd perhaps go back with extra zeal. And I mean, honestly, I personally, I really can't get back to have, can't wait to get back fans into stadiums. More logistical challenges, but I would speak from a general perspective over here, and not just
Mm.
someone who works in football. I would get very boring if I do that all the time. But just generally, for the love of sport, for the way we run sport, the way sport is should be, consumed by fans, consumed by people who are interested in it. I would really
Mm.
hope that fans manage to get back to
Well,
stadiums.
maybe you can give me some background, because we see even with Champions League, Europa League, that in different countries it works in different ways. For example, in Russia we play championship with the fans. Uh, Maybe now in St. Petersburg it's without the fans, but most of championship, each city has some limitations, but with the fans. In Europe, we also see that some countries they prefer let some fans to go like 10% or maybe more. What about Asia? Now it's like the whole continent. Nobody is playing with the fans, or that's different from country to country.
No, it is different from country to country. I mean, as a continental federation, we do not limit anyone to not having fans as long as they meet the health and safety guidelines in their particular country. People have had fans in the stadiums. To be honest, as early as March, I think we had fans coming in. Not March, sorry. I think April, in which fans were coming in to stadiums in Vietnam and watching games. And obviously, when the cases went high over there, they discontinued that. But right now, there are leagues, there are countries where the pandemic is not as severe, or as is perhaps a little more contained than a lot of other countries. So they would have fans. Everyone, pretty much everyone would want fans. It's just that you need to
Mm.
meet the health and safety guidelines, because human life matters the most. And that's something that people are waiting for. So even in Qatar, for that matter, they're supposed to have a Emir Cup final in a week from now, on the 19th, on the 18th, and they would have fans for that. I mean, not the whole stadium, but 50% capacity. And even the AFC Champions League might have fans on the 19th. So I mean, we have played the whole event more than 75 games without fans, but it'd be good to have people come in, support the players. Persepolis is going to play the final. There are a bunch of Iranis who live in Qatar. It would be good to have them cheer for their team and just give us some semblance of how operations or football operations or being in a football match felt like before this started.
Let's talk about your job. How does it change after this pandemic situation? What is the difference now? And maybe you can also describe your normal day today and 1 year ago, for example.
I mean, that's a good question. So I joined AFC after working on four different LOCs, local organizing committees of different tournaments. First in India and then in the United Arab Emirates. A couple of them were FIFA tournaments, a couple of them were AFC tournaments. And when I joined the Asian Football Confederation, my job was pretty simple: to do what uh, the Confederation does. I mean, at the end of it, the competitions are FIFA or AFC events. In our case, AFC events. So we set down guidelines for media and broadcast, and the LOCs prepare the infrastructure, and then we carry out our operations on a match to match basis. So that is what my brief was when I joined. And we have a nuclear team, but that's what we do. We go around tournament to tournament trying to implement the best practices that we have set for media and broadcast operations.
And by tournaments, you mean Asian Cups,
Yes.
Champions League?
Yeah. So all the age group Asian tournaments, Alex, all the
Okay.
men's senior Asian tournaments, all the women's senior AFC tournaments, all of them. So yeah, that's what I
And what
do.
are your responsibilities? It's to control broadcasters or what?
Yes, to be honest, I would not say control. The idea is to facilitate the best
Hmm.
environment for broadcasters and for journalists who are coming in. Even when I worked in LOCs, I always emphasize that you need to think what exactly does a journalist need to do from the time that he conceptualizes to go and cover an event to actually covering the event. So, if he's sitting in his home in a different country, he would perhaps start off by applying for accreditation. So, your accreditation or the media channel has to be in order. Then he would perhaps look for a visa. So, if you're an LOC, you need to facilitate a visa. He would get flight tickets, land in whatever country the competition is, and look for hotels. So, we would create a brochure for hotels. He would want to go to the stadiums. So, we would create a media shuttle plan to get them from the hotels to the stadiums. We would have security checks which are different from the usual security checks for crowds in stadiums for media. And then we would create the optimum office space for them, the stadium media center, the press conference room, the media tribune, the mix zone, all
All
of it. So,
facilities for the media, right?
yeah, absolutely. To just ensure that a broadcaster or a journalist, media or photographer, I mean, press or photographer, can come in and do their job to the optimum. I think I break it down like that. I simplify it, and I really think that that's the best way of going about it. Because unless you think who you're catering to, then you're just doing things for yourself, which I don't think is the case for us. We are serving journalists, we're serving broadcasters, so it's best to think like them and think of things that they would need and then take it forward. So yeah, that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. But this pandemic has been slightly different because again, health and safety takes precedence,
Yeah.
and we have really put in a lot of effort to try and ensure that journalists who are coming in are safe, our players are safe, who are our primary
But
stakeholders.
how? It's tests or
Yeah, a lot
additional
of
measures?
testing, Alex, to begin with. Basically, ensure that people who are walking into stadiums are at least tested before they do. That's
And
something which we are
journalists
doing.
also?
Not all of them, not all of them, because some of them do not interact with the players who are in a bubble, who are in a bio bubble. That's, I'm sure you would have
But you
heard that
let some
term.
journalists to go in the bubble, because I can tell you, for example, for Russian championship, we have journalists, only main broadcasters. It's one, let's say, one host, operator, and maybe some guys helping with the microphones. So it's 3-4 people. All other journalists, they are on media tribune and they can't go downstairs.
Exactly. So it's pretty much the same for us. We
Hmm.
also segregate the press conference room where they can go, but they are quite far from the bubble people. That's one. There are bubble journalists as well for our competitions. Basically, journalists who travel with the teams from their respective
Oh,
countries. So because they are
I
in a
see.
bubble, they're staying in the same hotel. They travel
Yeah, yeah.
in segregated buses. So they're different. They're segregated from non-bubble journalists, and we ensure that they don't kind of cross paths at any point of time. So we do try and ensure that we are in the bubble. So we kind of stay with the bubble media, and we hand out the journalists who are not in the bubble to the LOC, which is not in the bubble itself. So yeah, like a clear distinction over there that the bubble people stay with or within the bubble, and the non-bubble people do the same. That
Yes,
they
yes.
stay with people who are not in the bubble.
What about press conference? It's by Zoom also, or by some platforms?
No, we are doing physical press conferences, but again, it's segregated, so the head table is quite distanced from the seats, and yeah, just I mean, ensure that the people who are in a bubble are distanced from the people who are not in a bubble. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't walk into the media tribune because there are non-bubble people over there, and so the LOC does not walk in to the bubble space in the press conference room. It's
Yeah.
basically ensuring that uh, two segregated groups of people over here do not mingle with one another. So we've kind of tried to simplify it like that,
And
and all the accreditation boards
the
are in it.
coaches, sorry, the coaches and press officers, they should wear masks.
No, the so we don't make the coaches wear masks. That's not a best
Hmm.
practice that we are following. But what we definitely do is that between each interaction, everything on the head table is sanitized. So If you have two back-to-back pre-match press conferences, we would get a team to sanitize everything on the head table, from the mics to the head table itself, every single thing. And it's not compulsory for them to wear masks. I mean, if they want to wear it, it's great. But yeah, the media officers follow that, but we don't enforce that upon the coaches or say the post-match press conference in which the MVP walks in. We do not enforce it upon them.
What about the measures around the game? For example, in Russia now, it's prohibited to make pictures, team pictures before the match, according to medical regulations.
So we do allow, Qatar does not prohibit that. So we do allow pictures to be taken before the game. But we do not allow, usually, I mean, you do media operations as well. So usually you would have photographers come in, right, to take the picture and then go back, what we call the rope procedure. That doesn't happen because that would mean mingling of non-bubble photographers with bubble people. So we only have the official photographer take pictures for us, and then we distribute it to the teams and other people who might need it. So yeah.
But in Russia, the pitch and the territory around the pitch is part of the bubble. Maybe you have a different system.
We have the same, except the area behind the A boards, there is segregated space for non-bubble media. So
wow.
we segregate the chairs for photographers who are not in the bubble, but they're slightly behind the A boards, and that's where they can basically sit down and cover the match from. But they're not allowed in front of the competition area at all, and they go nowhere close to the players at any point of time of the game.
Okay. So with this medical stuff, it's more or less clear. And now I want to talk with you a little bit about the Confederation, because maybe in Russia it's not so famous, and I could not know much about that.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to ask how many countries are the members of your Confederation, and if you have any countries, let's say, which are just partially recognized, for example, like Kosovo in Europe.
Yeah.
And
so we
in Europe
47. More. Yeah.
Okay.
We have 47 countries which are full members now. We had 46 till 2 days ago, but in the Congress, Northern Mariana Islands were also included in the Confederation. We're made a full member. So we have 47 full members, and that includes Australia, which is not really part of Asia, but does or is part of the Asian Football Confederation. So I think it's a decently big confederation because there are 47 members over there. But yeah, it's a recent development that it went from being 46 to 47. That's the number if you're looking for.
Yeah, and my question was more about the some territories which let's say, which is they don't have a clear status, like Kosovo or maybe Crimea, Abkhazia, because for example, Kosovo could play for UEFA games, but Crimea now it's Ukraine or Russia, it's not clear, and in the end of the day they're just playing championship for nothing. They could not participate in any championship. If you have such issues in Asia, and how you solve these problems?
I can't think of an issue like that actually in Asia or the current setup that
for example
exists.
Taiwan, I don't know, Taiwan is part of
they do play. Yeah, so they do play. They are recognized by the AFC and they do play. So but I really can't think of a disputed area as such which is not part of the Footballing Confederation when it comes to Asia. I mean, if I can think of something, I would have told you, but I can't think of a country which is kind of in
Palestine is playing also, right?
Sorry,
Palestine is playing.
That's a good question. But I do think Palestine is a full member as well, and
I saw they're playing in qualifications for World Cup, but about your local competitions, I don't know.
I mean, not something that I'm acquainted with, Alex, so I wouldn't want to comment on something that I'm not absolutely sure of. But because, like you said, I know that they're a full member because they do play in the World Cup qualifiers. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm not sure if they're not allowed to play in AFC because I don't think that's the case. I can't remember a country which is actually being disbarred from playing right now because of some dispute somewhere.
And if we just go away from concrete examples, if we
Yeah.
talk in general about this topic, when we have such territories,
Yeah.
what do you think could be a decision? Because, for example, I'm living in Sochi now, and it's about 10 or 20 kilometers. It's a border with Abkhazia.
Yeah.
Abkhazia, which is kind of country, but not really recognized by many states in the world. And
Yeah.
they organized someday a championship for the non-recognized countries, and they became a world champions in this
Yeah.
championship. Do you
Yeah.
think, does it make sense, or maybe they should be somehow integrated even with all these political issues, and it could be a decision for that from FIFA?
I mean, that's a great question, Alex. And I can't speak on behalf of my employers or
Yeah,
FIFA
of
for that
course, of
matter.
course.
But personally, I would love to see every country which wants to play football. I think that's the beauty of the sport, that you have more members in FIFA than the UN. I mean, it's football
Yes,
binds
yes.
people together like anything. So I used to be a journalist long back, and I remember interviewing an Afghanistan player. This is long back. I think this must be 7 or 8 years ago. And he was narrating how football made him feel normal. Football made him feel like it left him with no fear of everything else that was happening because of the whole unrest thing. He had lost a couple of family members, and he used to feel really bad on most days. And yet, when he used to play football, he used to forget about it. And if there is disputes, if there are issues in countries, and some of them you mentioned right now, I mean, football can really act upon
Yes,
the masses in a very unifying way. So if someone wants to play football, let them play football. That's it. And uh, of course, when it comes down to federations and confederations, some of them would not be recognized immediately. But some of the stories which comes about these smaller, little, tiny countries are just incredible. So why not give everyone an opportunity to play the beautiful game and let them just enjoy? And of course, they're not going to be beating Brazil tomorrow, or beat Belgium or England for that matter
yes,
immediately. But let them play, because eventually it's not always about winning the World Cup or moving up the FIFA rankings. It's about picking up a sport and just enjoying it for the fact that sport can be one of the greatest unifiers. You just feel better when you play
yes,
a sport. So why not let someone play a tournament? And fair enough, if a country which is disputed wants to hold a tournament amongst itself, let them do it. It's okay. I mean, everyone who wants to play football should be allowed to play football, and that goes for any sport for that matter. I mean, anyone who would want to indulge in an activity as beautiful as sports, let them just enjoy it. And some of the most you know inspirational, great life stories would emerge out of sporting tournaments, would just emerge out of sporting events where someone who you did not expect to do well just comes from nowhere to you know just land a performance which will remain edged in years. It's not for nothing that, say, the FIFA World Cup final or the Olympic 100-meter race is one of the
mm,
most watched events in the world on television, because people want to see it, people relate to it. I mean, if I look at a person losing or winning on the football pitch, I know how it feels like. And I'm not the only person. There are billions of people who'd feel the same way. So why prohibit people from playing sport? That's just what I feel. So I mean, again, not getting into the politics of it, but if anyone wants to play football,
yes, yes.
let them play. Yeah.
As one of my previous guests said, that it's too much politics in football right now.
I'm again not my place to comment on that, but
Yeah.
just generally, I think if you depolitize things, where obviously the moment an organization becomes big, there would be politics, and you know what I mean. Like
Yes, yes.
anything which becomes big gets under the scanner. So obviously there would be people asking questions, people would be wanting to remain in power, people would be wanting to take the right decisions, and everyone, you can't debate with them because everyone would have a different point of view which they think is right. So fair enough, let people have that. But something as basic as kicking a ball on a field of grass, clay, sand, whatever, should not be should or can be beyond politics. That's just what I feel. If a if a country's federation is being run properly or not, that's a much bigger issue than someone just playing football. So if you want to play football, just go and play football. If you want to run a marathon barefoot, go run a marathon barefoot. If you want to run the 100 meters on a, I know, I mean, on sand, run 100 meters on sand. Just do whatever
Okay.
makes you feel happy. And I think sport does that to people, right? I mean, I can't think of any other, common activity that people around the world indulge in so passionately and just be
Mm.
extremely passionate about. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, and I would say, you know what, I'll give you I know, $100,000, and if you're a Liverpool fan, just become a United fan. And they'd say, no,
No,
they've
not
never seen a
possible.
United. Yeah, they've never seen a Liverpool game at Anfield. They've never seen a Liverpool player live, and yet the loyalty is just
Mm.
unmatched. And sport does that to you. So if an activity can evoke so much emotion, why not just let people indulge in it?
Well, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can. Yeah,
Just a moment. Sorry, we have a game tomorrow, and some people now calling me. I need to see it.
yeah, no issues.
Well, next big issue I want to discuss with you, it's racism. Maybe
Yeah,
you heard also the last story in Champions League,
yeah.
and from time to time we always have these stories in European football. But to be honest, I never heard about anything like that in Asian football. Could you tell some words about the standards you have, and if you have, like in last 10 years, for example, any cases like that? And maybe you can give some comments also about the case we had in Paris.
So you're right. I can't think of a instance either of blatant racism in Asian football in a while. I just haven't come across anything of to that effect, and I'm very proud to say that. To be honest, is, not because I work in the Confederation, but because I just, for an entire continent to not let something as ridiculous and shameful as racism to crop up, I think is a great thing. And that's something that should be followed everywhere in the world, man. Just as simple as that. You judge a person not on the basis of their color or their race. It's as simple as that. It's a person in front of you, and you treat them as a person. And I really can't think of a example from Asia in in at least the time that I have followed sport over here. And maybe there have been and that I don't remember, but just from what I have seen, I can't remember anything that would be to that effect of racism and people racially abusing or discriminating against other people in Asian football. But yeah, just overall, I
But there
just
are a
think
lot
it's a,
of different people in Asian football. I mean, from
yeah, of
Africa
course, it's a
also.
very diverse set of people,
Yeah.
except, uh, somehow I never feel that there are people who are discriminating against another diverse set. So, for example, we are a, we are a massive continent. So,
Yeah.
someone from Japan is obviously going to be completely different from someone, say, from Qatar, or someone from Uzbekistan speaks a different language, leads a different life. The very basis of racism looks different, yeah, and yet we hardly come across people who would be discriminating against the other set. It's not very difficult to do that, I mean, if I'm talking to you right now, I'm not talking to, I don't know, someone who's Caucasian for that matter. I'm just talking to a person who has common interests as
Yes.
I do. And I'm sure you wouldn't, as in, in your head, constantly be thinking
Yeah.
that this is a brown guy that I'm interviewing. You're talking to me because we have a shared common interest.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
not very difficult to do that. The moment, you and I, both being media officers, start talking about rope procedures, start talking about media tribunes, that's the language that we both speak. And it's the same for footballers. The moment they have a ball at their feet, it doesn't matter where we come from. We now speak the same language. And that's something that sports should inherit, as in, intrinsically develop in people. And that's why I'm really surprised when, fans, when people who follow sport, who are into sport, would indulge in such activities, which just is ridiculous. How does it matter where a person is from if he manages to score a goal from 40 yards out as well? And the same for the player that you supposedly like. So, I mean, I understand where it comes from. I understand how it works, and I really lament the way it still crops up its head from time to time. But I really have a difficult time wrapping my head around the fact that why does it happen in the first place? I mean, if people just sit down calmly and think about it, it just should be a no issue.
In Russia, the discussion was that, and not the discussion, but that some people say that, it was, I don't know how to say it polite, but most of the people on the bench, they were Europeans, and only one guy was different, and the referee doesn't know the name of this guy, and that's why he said like that. So it was like not by purpose, but
I mean, I'm not going to give the benefit of doubt to the referee over here, but I can see where the excuse is coming from. But Dembaba just said the right thing, that when you talk to a white guy, you don't say that white guy.
yes.
But when you talk about a black guy, why do you call him a Negro? You can just say number 9. Whatever the number is, that's the usual parlance, right? If you don't know a name, you call them by their number. Or it's not, especially in times of social distancing, it's not very difficult to point to a player because he's quite away from everyone else as well. So, I would understand where the excuse is coming from. It's just that if the referee or the fourth official in this case was slightly more careful, and that's something, it's not even being careful, man. If it's normalizing things, where it's not normalizing things, it's not okay to call someone referring to them by their race. It's that simple. So if you have worked in football for so long, it's not the first time, I'm sure, he's doing that, because if he's doing it in a Champions League match, in a high pressure game where there are people around, where there are high profile players who are playing around you, I'm sure he has done it in the past. And if someone's not pointed it out to him in the past, I just I don't understand why that is the case. It should be brought up a lot before, because trust me, now that guy is not going to go and repeat the same mistake again ever in his life. It's just that if it would not have happened at such a big stage, it would have been better for him, better for that player, and better for pretty much everyone involved. Even UEFA gets put into a spot because you play the rest of the game the next day, which I think was a fantastic decision. But just generally, that should ideally not happen in the first place.
You said about the players, but maybe just finish with this situation. What can you tell if there is one coach who's different from the others? How was a polite way for the referee to say who should get this yellow card on the bench?
Know their name. That's it. You get a team sheet before the match. I'm sorry, but if you can't remember the names as or the numbers, that's it. Yeah,
makes sense.
Head coach. If you can't remember a name, I'm just saying that I find this excuse, and pardon me, I find this excuse, but completely futile. That there's no other way to refer to a person without mentioning how they look. That's it. It's not about using the word Negro. If it's if it's an East Asian player, you don't call him small eyes. Why would you do that? That's it. It's simple. Or if it's an Indian guy, you don't call him the brown guy in the red t-shirt. Just know his name. It's a list of 22 people over there in front of you. Okay, say 30. And 2 head coaches. How difficult is it to remember their names? All look into the sheet, which is
or
right
you can ask even the head coach who's this guy.
Yeah, perhaps. I'm just saying there are different ways of doing it, and surely isn't very difficult to use a proper noun rather than an adjective in this case.
Anyway, thank you for your opinion. It was quite interesting.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you asked. And yeah.
So at the moment we have different people working in media, and especially some former players. I know that during World Cup, Petr Schmeichel was working for some TV stations, and now Gary Lineker, Oliver Kahn. What about the Asia? How many former football players are working for maybe for the federation or for TV channels?
I can't actually think of a player working as a media manager for the federation, because that's your question. Yeah. But for TV channels, obviously during a marquee tournament, you'd have, and I've been to two World Cups. I've spent a lot of time roaming around in the stadium media centers and the media tribunes. I think they're the best places to meet former players because all of them are on broadcast
Mm.
responsibilities and they would be roaming
Wow.
around. You just named a few, but I can think of like 20, 30 people at the back of my head who would have just met at the coffee station in the World Cup.
Maybe
Because
you can say some names.
I'll tell you some funny ones. I met uh, Kaka in the opening game of the 2014 World Cup. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was very funny because I was just going to use the washroom and I see Kaka coming out and like, oh, okay. And that was my
Great.
first day in a World Cup media center, right? So I was like, oh, this is what a SMC is like over here. Because
Wow.
I'm used to meeting just journalists all across the world. Like they suddenly just, oh, okay. And another, I mean, a lot of other players, the regulars. You've named Gary Lineker. I met the Neville brothers. I met people who have had interactions with Gus Poet. A bunch of them. I mean, obviously, having interactions would be limited to people who would speak or be fluent in English because my Spanish or Portuguese is kind of not not there at all,
Very
except for
beginner,
the
yeah.
pleasantries. Yeah, yeah. Perhaps no five
Okay.
Russian words, but that's it. So it would have been difficult for me to talk to a former Russian international, but people who I would have met is just a very long list, man. People who would have played in England, people. I remember David Beckham was there 2014 for a couple of games, and he walked into the media center as well. He was not there as a journalist, but he was there too. But you just come across like the biggest superstars just roaming around in the studios, in the media center, in the media tribune. That's just is very normal, especially in the World Cup,
And maybe
because
you
you're
have some
there to watch.
stories with them. Maybe you had any conversations, or you took their phone numbers. I don't know.
No, I also don't have pictures, man. It goes back to my childhood. I was told that you shouldn't take pictures with celebrities, so I don't even take pictures with celebrities. Very limited pictures with people who I've met. But 2014 World Cup, because I was there as a journalist,
Mm.
was really fun because as I said, you meet them all the time, right? You would meet these people, cross them all the time, and over a period of time, if you're there for say 2, 3, 4 weeks, you now see the same faces, so they recognize you as well. So what I used to do was I would have to write a lot of articles. So I would just catch hold of one of them and talk to them for like a minute and ask them for their opinion of the game, and that would leave me with enough quotes to write a short article. So I used to intentionally bump into a former footballer, and I remember I met Dunga. I ensured I found someone who spoke Portuguese to English. I spoke to him for like 3 or 4 minutes. That was like two articles right there. Match day minus
Wow.
one, and yeah, for the next match day minus one. But yeah, it was quite fun. I just never thought it would be like that. But I over a period of time, I quite enjoyed doing it.
As you said about your experience as journalist, maybe we jumped out of this part of my interview about your
Yeah,
career. How did you start? What did you study? As I understand, you're from India, or maybe
yeah.
I'm wrong.
So what I mean, I've studied quite a bit because I was always into academics, but none of my degrees have anything to do with what I do professionally. And
Mm.
also, I had to work to sustain myself in New Delhi, which is the capital of India, and I'm not from there. I'm from a place which is 1,500 kilometers away. So to do that, I had to work or do a full-time job throughout the time that I was studying, and that's a good
And what
10
was
years.
your
I believe.
education? Still, can you say some words about
Sorry, say that again.
the field? What was your education? In which
Yeah,
field?
so I studied science in high school. So I went to
Uh-huh.
Delhi University to study, do a bachelor's in chemistry, which I didn't quite
Wow.
enjoy, but I was quite scared of my father to not do it. So, but I did that, and then I moved, uh, you know, courses, and I basically did a master's and then MPhil and a PhD in literature. So, yeah, I mean, I moved
In
from chemistry to
literature, the PhD
literature.
in
Yeah,
literature. Wow,
literature. Yeah, yeah.
great. So you finished PhD,
So
and parallel you worked for.
just finished my PhD last year, submitting my PhD. As you would understand, I've always worked full time. You've seen through some of the things that I've done. So it's been 12 and a half
Yeah.
years of working, but it's also been like 10 years of academics in between. So
Wow.
Thankfully, my university wasn't very finicky about attendance, so I never had to go to classes. But yeah, I could just study on my own, give exams, pass. So did that.
And
Did that for well.
then it's more interesting. How did you come to football if you didn't have even a professional education about media, about football? How did you start? What was your first experiences, and how did you
So
get
I
these first
started.
experiences?
I started, Alex. The background was that there's this trivia contest in India called the ESPN School Quiz. It used to happen when we were in school.
Mm,
So I qualified for that 3 times. It was a TV show which used to happen, and that made me a trivia buff. So I used to memorize sporting tidbits. I used to memorize sporting facts. So you can ask me anything
mm,
which would be from a different continent, from a different country, and I would perhaps have some knowledge of it, if not everything. Say about the Olympic Games for that matter, or even the Football World Cup. You could ask me about the 1930 Football World Cup, and I would tell you the goal scorers from every game. And so
great.
I was into sport in general. So I reached Delhi, and I basically, like I told you, I had to sustain myself to live in Delhi. So I had to find a job for myself. And thankfully, I bumped into a guy who had seen me on TV, and he said, "Okay, cool. I will offer you a job." And this is when I was 18. It was a full time job. I used to go to office 8 hours a day, and I used to get paid $50 a month. But it was a job, so I started, and then one
Great.
thing led to another, and things worked out. Man, a lot of it is just pure luck, if that's how I would put it. I
And what
put in
was
the
your
hard work.
first job, or what was your responsibilities on that job?
It was a publishing house, and
Uh,
I was 18, so I didn't really know how to
mm,
write well. I mean, or write for that matter. And all I knew that I was really interested in sports, so I could do sports research. So we were working on sporting publications, and my job basically back in the day was to read up a lot of books and write notes for someone who's compiling them. So that was
mm,
my first job. And eventually, as in 6 months, actually, I managed to become the guy who was writing it himself. And so the promotions happened very quickly. And I became like a full-time correspondent for magazines, worked for TV channels, and then this was still a full-time job in football came about, which was the under 17 World Cup in India.
mm.
So from 2016 onwards, I've been working full-time in football.
Wow. So, but before
I
2016, you had this job for publishing or as a journalist.
started off as in publishing, worked for TV
Hmm.
channels, worked as a journalist. Yeah, pretty much anything to ensure that I have money to pay my rent and need food on a monthly basis. That's how
Crazy.
it began. And obviously, things got better over the years. It did not stay $50 for a very long time. But I really relished that or reminisce that phase with a lot of fondness, actually, because people usually start looking for jobs when they're 22, 23, or even 25,
Yes,
26
yes,
at times. And I did that when I was 18.
yes.
So by the time I was 22, I already had 4 years of experience of working full time in sports uh, organizations which worked or delved into sports. So fantastic experience. I would not change it at all. I mean, it was tough, but it worked out in the end, and
Sure.
nothing beats work experience. I always say that, and I have nothing to. I mean, even though I've studied quite a bit, none of it is actually related to what I do professionally, and yet it's amazing to. I mean, you know, just work in sport, build up your experience, and then try and do new things, because nothing substitutes that. You can do 10 different courses, but if you haven't done it on the ground, you'd never actually understand it properly. So
Yeah.
I took that route, and I don't obviously mean to say that courses are futile and people should not do it, but I do think that after a course, and I come across a lot of people who think that they should get a job immediately after passing out of a sports management degree.
Mm.
That's just not how things work on the ground.
It's a
So
long way. Yeah.
yeah,
Even
so
I
do a
had the
course.
same way. It's
Yeah,
quite.
I'm sure if you did a course, you would know that when you work for a club, in your case, or work on a big tournament, you know that things are completely different. None of those things were actually
Yes,
taught in the
yes.
classroom. So, uh, I mean, put in the years to complete your degree, but also put in a decent amount of time trying to learn it on the ground. So, because when we go to college, we don't immediately think of getting a job. We think of, fine, I'll do this degree, learn what I have to, and then get a job. So in our case, because the industry is a little nascent, what we should do is to go to university, do that degree, but also, you know put in a little bit of time trying to understand it on the ground. If you have to intern. If you have to go as an observer, become an observer. But
Yeah.
to to move up, you have to understand what you kind of are trying to enter. It's not as glittery as it seems like from the outside, as you can perhaps tell as well.
As you said about 2016, I understand that you worked for LOC, right, in
Yes,
India.
I did. Yeah.
And now you're working for Confederation, for Asian Confederation. How did you
Yeah.
get this job, and how more responsibilities you have, or maybe now you just like more managing the things and not doing by yourself?
So see, as I said, I've worked on 4 LOCs for 4 years, and working in an LOC and working in FIFA or AFC are two completely different things. The LOC sets up the infrastructure, and FIFA or AFC pulls off the
Yes,
operations when the event happens.
yes,
Yeah, so they're completely different. I wouldn't say it's these are two jobs that you would perhaps want to compare, because I really don't find much correlation between the two jobs. But an understanding of the basic work is pretty much common throughout those two workplaces. So to come up with the right set of infrastructure, you would have to understand why FIFA or AFC is demanding it in the first place, and then take it forward. So I did that, and that's how the AFC job eventually came over, because
mm,
my counterpart, obviously, because I was head of media for the Asian Cup, my counterpart was the head of media for AFC. We had a chat after the tournament. He asked me if I would want to join in, and I just said yes, because I thought this could be a nice challenge. And I absolutely loved working on LOCs, and I quite enjoy working for AFC as well. So it's not something that I would, want to compare, but I just feel that they're both different, but they are both pretty special in their own way.
and the headquarter of AFC in Qatar, right?
No, it's in
Or
Kuala
no?
Lumpur. It's in Kuala Lumpur.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's in
But why
Malaysia.
now you are there because of this tournament?
Because of the tournament. Yeah, so we are
Oh.
all based out of Malaysia, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for the tournament we travel to different places.
Great. It's difficult with the family, no?
I mean, I have a very nuclear family. My parents are still home in India, and I mean, I don't have a partner, or I'm not
Okay.
married yet. So, I mean, it's just me and my suitcases which move around from one country to another. So that's not much of
You
a,
know,
yeah.
I heard such expression like Olympic gypsies. It's about people who travel around the world for organizing Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
I'm a
more or
I'm a
less similar.
LOC gypsy. I travel around the world working on LOCs. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I will check what I maybe forget to ask you. Uh, you said about FIFA some words. Maybe from your experiences working with FIFA, I didn't get if you worked for FIFA or you worked with people from FIFA.
No, I worked for 2 LOCs for FIFA.
Mhm.
So I've worked for the LOC of the FIFA Under 17 World Cup in India in 2017,
Mm,
and I worked on the LOC of the FIFA Club World Cup in 2018. I've been to a bunch of FIFA tournaments, and I've had a great experience working with people from FIFA. Fantastic people, especially the departments that I was coordinating with: communications, digital, media operations. Amazing people to work with. Just I made some great friends along the way. So great memories of working with people from FIFA. Still do. I mean, still cross paths. Obviously, it's a small industry, so we keep discussing things. We share notes, and we just keep ourselves up to date with the industry. Brilliant set of people. So and a great experience for me. I never would have thought, even when I was a journalist, never would have thought working that closely with FIFA. If people would have told me at 32 you would have already worked on 2 FIFA events, you would have covered like 5 others, we would have done 10 different AFC events, I would like, you're joking. But things have worked out, and I think both places, man, both places, both FIFA and AFC, been really fortunate to make some great professional friends, some great friends in general, and meeting with them. And it just seems like a very different world from the outside. It is not. It is.
Yes, yes.
I mean, you think that these are people who are really privileged being around football stars. It's not that way. Once you enter
Yeah.
this job, you understand that everyone's trying to do something common over here. You understand your work, and then you pull it off as a job. So that's something that people should acknowledge. And I think I've had a great time just working with people from FIFA, people from AFC. So hopefully for some more years at least that I manage to continue doing this.
And maybe you can stress some characteristics or some lessons you learned working with FIFA and for FIFA.
I do think that they managed to segregate or compartmentalize really well. So if you and I are two people who are working on the same department but have different sets of responsibilities on a particular match day, we just ensure that we do our job well. That's it. We don't have to worry about the other person because we trust the other person to do their job well. We
Yes.
have to worry about our job, and that's all that you should worry about. And I think coming from where I do, we tend to try and do everything. And that's what I
Yes,
learned from
yes.
FIFA really well. We don't have to do everything. You get
Yes.
the people to do everything, different people to do different things, and let people do their job. Because if too many cooks spoil the soup, it's the same. Don't let everyone do everything. Let people do their own thing and move forward. That's it. Yeah.
During these 3 years in the club in Sochi, I
Yeah.
feel that from the beginning I was more like a maker of everything, as you
Yeah.
said now. But now I'm more as a manager. I control people, somebody making pictures, somebody making videos. And what about you? When you started growing professionally, still do you have some space for doing yourself some small stuff maybe, or you're more like a manager also?
I mean, that's a great question, Alex. Except, especially in football, I've always been, except for the current job right now, because I do have a head of department. But before this, I've always been head of a department. So my job primarily was to manage people and
Yeah.
get people to do or work at their optimum. But in things like communication or digital, and you mentioned creating digital content, creating videos, taking pictures,
Yes.
there is no boss. I mean, I have learned a lot from people who worked with me. And if I would have
Yeah.
been very strict and very rigid about what I think is right, which I think a lot of people do, and they should never do that, I wouldn't have learned so much from people who are working, in the hierarchy below me. There is no hierarchy. I mean, if there is someone who comes in with a cool social media idea, he can be an intern for that matter. But I would listen to his idea and I would perhaps, you know, try and come up with a similar idea on a different occasion. So
Yeah.
that's something that I always insist that I learn as much from people that people learn from me if I'm their reporting manager. So there are certain things that because I'm a little more experienced, I would put in paper. There would be guidelines that you would need to follow, which someone new might or might not know about. But if it just comes down to being creative, if it just comes down to floating ideas and working upon them, first, I mean, my idea can or cannot be or might not be as good as the intern's idea. And
Yeah.
it will take a fool to not acknowledge that. I mean, who can define virality in today's digital world? No
Yeah.
one can. So if someone says, "Boss, why are you not listening to me?" I think I would have failed that day because no one should say that to me. I would listen to everyone, and I would perhaps given my inputs, and I would do things on my own. I would have asked them for inputs, and obviously they're deliverables. So okay, this needs to be delivered to say FIFA or AFC. So I would say that okay, cool, let's deliver it properly. But I
Yeah.
would not emphasize over and over again that whatever I'm saying is the final word.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
yeah,
understand.
I just feel
Actually,
like that.
actually, it's a good trait because I see in my job also that sometimes I'm wrong. I need to listen to people what they
Yeah,
think, what they say.
yeah,
Another big issue for me, big topic. It's about the football in mm, let's say desert countries like Saudi Arabia,
yeah.
Qatar, Emirates. what do you think about the football in these countries? Because some people are skeptical that it's like not football nations, and this World Cup in Qatar doesn't make any sense. As far as you're living in this country, maybe you could argue with that, and you can say some words why football is important for these countries also.
So basically, with what I started off saying, Alex, football is a global sport. You should let football happen anywhere and everywhere. And when it comes down to, and if the concern is about, say, the weather, fair enough.
Yeah,
I mean, have that concern, but allow someone to act upon it. If you look at the stadiums in Qatar, they're absolutely brilliant. They're all air conditioned from inside. There are no temperature concerns. They have all excellent pitch conditions, which would happen in countries which are just generally more adept at grass or growth of grasses, or the maintenance of a pitch. So if that is the case, if a country manages to find a way around these logistical issues, there's no reason why football should not happen anywhere in the world. I mean, it's that simple. Why just the countries in the Gulf? If it can happen in, say, if someone can regulate the temperature in in a very cold place, and you can play with
yeah,
the pitch being normal, let's do it there as well. Let's do it at every place where you can possibly play a game of football. You know of places in, say, South America, which are really high in altitude, and people would say that people have trouble breathing. But there are people who are doing that. And that's the beauty of the game, that you still can
yeah,
play football in diverse places with people from diverse background, and let that flourish overall. So create a standard, but don't restrict someone from hosting an event, is how I feel about it. And I don't think any of these countries, because I've lived in the UAE, I've worked a lot in
yeah.
Qatar, are not conducive to hosting football. They really can. I think the World Cup would be a fantastic event over here when it happens in 2022. And I think Russia put up a great show in 2018. And I think to follow it up, I think Qatar would do everything that it can to achieve a similar level over there.
And that the event will be in December. It's
Yes,
not a
November,
problem
December.
for the for the football, not because the
I think
season
they
is.
have scheduled their calendars accordingly for that season. And I think, again, you're right. I mean, it is something which is not usually seen, but if the bosses up there have managed to figure out a calendar which can be implemented, I think it should be implemented. Yeah.
Also, of course, it's not your job, but maybe as far as you're in Qatar, you can say some words. I heard that the stadiums will be reconstructed and sent to some different countries and regions after World Cup.
There would be. That's part of a sustainability plan that they have put together, where they acknowledge the fact that such big stadiums would not be filled to capacity when the World Cup gets over. So,
Yes,
what's the
yes.
point of keeping so many stadiums? And you'd see examples
And
from.
where they will be sent, in which countries?
I have
Is
no
it
clue,
no?
actually. I haven't actually
Okay.
read the reports, but they are planning upon it, and I'm sure they will
Okay.
detail it later. But I've seen examples from South Africa, from Brazil, of stadiums just not being maintained properly after the
Great.
World Cup gets over. And I think if that is the case, you would rather have a facility which you can maintain and not have a facility which you cannot maintain at all. So these are
Yes. Yes.
fantastic. Like the Asian Champions League, AFC Champions League is happening in stadiums which are World Cup stadiums, and these are fantastic facilities. But if you cannot use it to the optimum after the tournament gets over, it's best to
Yes.
send
Yes.
it off to some other place. Yeah.
Sure. I looked through your website of Confederation. I say some words and then ask some questions.
Yeah.
First of all, I
I
like
do
that
have
you
a
have.
meeting, by the way, Alex, so might need to wrap up soon. I'm so sorry about that. But
You
yeah,
need to
I'm happy to
finish.
listen to this question. Yeah, go for it.
Maybe
We
you
have
have
5 more minutes.
5 minutes, okay?
5 minutes,
And
yeah.
after that, yeah, okay.
Sure.
I like that you have national championships on this
Yes.
website.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I think
Yeah.
that UEFA doesn't have this.
Yeah.
Um, but I see only that the website in two languages. It's Arabic and English. Why no Chinese?
Why no Chinese? So we
Yes.
are in the process of doing that right now.
Okay.
It's being worked upon. So unlike, I mean, at a point of time, AFC had the website in a lot of different languages. If I'm not wrong, in 8 or 9 different languages. So we had Korean, we had Hindi, we had Japanese, and we still
Sorry,
have.
about which website you are talking?
So the AFC website,
Ah,
the Asian football website that you're looking at right now, used to be in 8 different languages, 8 or 9 different languages,
ah,
if I'm not wrong. Yeah,
it's your
but
plan.
yeah, it was no, it was there already till we
Ah,
discontinued it. So we have social media handles in a lot of languages right now, and
yeah.
we are working towards creating a website in different languages as well. So you know, when you do something like that, at times, especially with federations, especially with bigger bodies, people are not able to maintain it properly, and that should never happen. So I think our confederation is planning it properly, ensure that there's a proper team in
Mm,
place to ensure that content goes in and goes out
okay,
properly.
okay.
Yeah.
Then go shortly some more questions.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your books. You told me that you wrote a lot about Olympic sports. You
Yeah.
have one book about cricket player, and now you're preparing the book about Maradona. But you started before his death,
Yeah.
and maybe
Yeah.
you can explain why you started this book and if how the death of Maradona was perceived in Asia.
Okay, so I'll talk you through the answers over there. I started working in publishing, so I started contributing to a lot of books back in India. That's how I started. My first individually written book is this book called No Dai Dhoni. It's about a cricket player who retired a few months ago. So I put together a book about his career, and it's a combination of trivia tidbits and questions about him, so you kind of know about it. So
Mm,
the theme was No Dai, which is Know Your Dhoni. So I started writing
mm,
No Dai Maradona and a couple of others which I
oh,
don't want to disclose right now. But
okay.
I started writing No Dai Maradona before, and unfortunately he passed away, so we would perhaps prepone the release to next month, maybe January. So that was the idea of creating a series where you try and know these big really famous players in a interactive format where you ask questions and you get answers and
Uh,
basically narrate some stories about them and go about it.
and how he is
So
famous in Asia, Maradona.
he's really famous in Asia. Of course, I mean, in India as well, in my hometown as well, he's like treated like a god. So he's really,
Oh,
really famous. So uh, it was a pretty sad day across Asia. Yeah, people paid homage to him in different parts of the continent across different countries. So it's not just Argentina or South America's loss, but people around the world, I think, who followed the sport
yes,
would
yes.
acknowledge that he was one of the greatest to play the game. Yeah.
Maybe we could expect that someday one of the stadium in Asia will be called by his name also.
He coached a team in Dubai. He coached a team in Dubai called Al Wasl. So you never know, man. Napoli already did it in Italy. So
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if more people follow suit.
More about your hobbies. You said about quizzing, festivals, barefoot. You started these festivals in 2012. Was it
I
like a
did.
hobby, or you had some specific motivation for that?
No, it was always a hobby. Quizzing was always a hobby, something that I really liked doing. So I started this festival, which has since become one
How
of
it's
India's.
huge? How many people participate?
So we would have around 200 teams or three participate in a
Wow.
festival. So a decent number of people. It's still a very an activity which not a lot of people enjoy doing over a very prolonged period of time. So we don't have, say, thousands and thousands of people, but you'd still have a decent number of people who'd walk in for our quizzes. And it's quite fun. It's quite fun to be tested on sporting trivia, on things that you'd usually not hear of. But anything in sport from anywhere in the world could be asked, and people travel from different parts of India. People travel from outside the country actually to participate in these contests. So good fun. I
Mm.
think it's been 9 years and 14 editions of the festival, and it's been really really good, the whole bit of it.
And tell me some words about cricket. You said that you also played cricket. How
Failed
far?
cricketer. Yeah, I'm a
How
failed
far you
cricketer.
got
I
playing
played
cricket?
age group cricket. I played college cricket. It was it was a great experience learning the game because my father was a cricket coach. and I always attribute pretty much every life virtue that I picked up from the field of cricket.
You
But
said
I
your
was an
father, or
absolute.
sorry, your
My
father?
father was a cricket coach.
Ah,
Yeah, so
great,
at the
great.
local level. Yeah, but I mean, everything that I picked up is perhaps from the game of cricket. But I was an absolutely shit cricketer. I'm very honest about it. Yeah, I mean, I could have never tried playing cricket professionally. So I would rather, try and do something else and not indulge in the game for too long.
And maybe the last question,
Yeah,
what is the main problem of local football in India and in Asia as a whole?
I think I haven't actually been to enough Asian countries to speak about Asia and the
Mhm.
football issue in Asia. But I wouldn't call the issue it being an issue in India. It's just that we haven't really, invested enough time into the sport recently, at least in India. I think now there is an Indian Super League which is happening. There's another I League which happens over there. We have hosted an AFC tournament. We have hosted a FIFA tournament. We are supposed to host another two AFC and FIFA tournaments next year. So as more and more people start working in it, as more and more kids start playing the game, I think football would develop to greater heights because we really do play some sports well. Like we are really good in cricket. Uh, but it's kind of we were amazing in hockey, field hockey, and yet football has kind of eluded the. I mean, success in football has eluded us. So we can only wait and watch, and I don't think I can zero on what is the issue, Alex. But I mean, there is scope for football to become bigger, and I think it is becoming bigger over the last few years. And hopefully, in the near future, we would at least have a competitive team playing the sport over a prolonged period of time. I mean, it's not going to be only once in every 10 years that a team qualifies for the Asian Championship.
Yeah,
It should rather happen every edition. So
yeah, yeah.
hopefully that will happen, and the same for the age group tournaments. Because I think it starts from there. So fingers crossed. Let's see. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that India will become a footballing country over a period of time.
Well, Aniket, thank you very much for this
Thank you
time.
so much,
And
Alex.
the last thing I ask is if you can recommend me somebody for as a next guest for the next interview.
I would definitely I think about it because there are quite a few people who come to mind
Yeah.
immediately. But I'll drop you a message, and I'm sure there are more people from Asia who you would love talking to and taking
Yes,
this forward.
maybe
Yeah,
go to the east, like Japan, South Korea, because
yeah,
I'm
sure.
dreaming about these countries, but I never had any guests from there.
I'll definitely try and find a guest for you from East Asia for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex. Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.